So I've plotted out the quickest route from 2 Crookham Road where Barry George lives to 29 Gowan Avenue where Jill Dando lives, and the distance is 0.34 miles from door to door. 0.34 miles, which is conservatively probably a 5-minute walk at the most. Now, can you remember this corner here? This is called Bishop's Road, and this road here is called Monster Road. And in the first reconstruction, a man was seen witness crossing over from the corner of Monster and Bishop's Road onto Gowan Avenue.
He was near the other end of Gowan Avenue.
I was coming out of Bishop's Road and wanted to turn right and immediate left to cross Monster Road into Gowan Avenue, and he was outside the glazier's shop, and as I went, he crossed. He kept looking up and down the road. I thought maybe he was looking for the road name. He was looking up.
So coincidentally, the day Jill Dando was shot, a man was seen waiting on the corner of Bishop's Road on Monster Road to cross onto Gowan Avenue. This man had probably walked up Bishop's Road. And this is about the same time that the witness, the postman Terry Griffin, see a man outside Jill Dando's house. This is probably the same man. And it just so happens that Barry George did approach this postman, if you see the last episode. A few weeks after the murder of Jill Dando, Barry George approached this postman and told him he had just seen the killer of Jill Dando in a cafe. Barry George was also picked out of a video photo ID by Susan Mays on the morning Jill Dando was shot.
Susan Mays, who told the court she was very sure she had seen the defendant near Jill Dando's house shortly before the television presenter was shot dead. Ms. Mays was driving to work and she says she wondered what a man was doing standing next to a car looking at houses on both sides of the road.
So we got 2 Crookham Road where Barry George lives, then we got 29 Gowan Avenue where Jill Dando lives, and 2 streets away there's a road called Lambrook Terrace. And on this road, a woman alleges that she was attacked by Barry George. Diplomat in tears as she tells court, "I was chased and grabbed by a Dando killer." A diplomat broke down in tears yesterday as she recalled the moment she was grabbed in the street by the loner accused of murdering Jill Dando. Claudia Casey, 40, sobbed as she described how she was forced to jump into a passing car to escape Barry George. The Old Bailey was told how the former BBC presenter approached her as she walked home in Fulham, southwest London on a Sunday night in 1995. The retrial has heard that the 48-year-old allegedly targeted a string of women, photographing their movements and following them home before he shot Miss Dando on her Fulham doorstep in 1999. Miss Casey, who works for the Foreign Office in London, told the jury, "I felt there was someone following right behind me and he caught up with me and started talking to me. I just ignored him. He kept saying, 'I would like to talk to you, I would like to talk to you.' I completely ignored him at first, but when he continued, I said no thank you. Alarm bells were ringing because he was not going away. He handed me a business card and it said Freddie Balsara. I knew that was Freddie Mercury's real name, so I realised there was something very strange with this guy. I knew that's when I had to get away from him. I think I started running and that's when he grabbed my arm. I just said, I tried to shake him off. I ran and somehow half pushed him and half shoved him at the same time. He kept on saying, 'I only want to talk to you, I only want to talk to you.' He held hold of me for about 10 seconds. Casey said she ran past her home so George would not know her address and crouched beside a parked car to think. She said when a car appeared, she leapt in front of it. I just opened the passenger door and jumped in. I did not know who was in the car. I just got inside because I thought it would be safer." So Claudia Casey, a diplomat, alleged in court that Barry George creeped up behind her, grabbed her by the arm in the street, 2 streets away from where Jill Dando was murdered. Now, does this mean that Barry George killed Jill Dando? Of course not. But what this does show is predatory behaviour by Barry George in the area where Jill Dando was murdered. In fact, 2 streets away. Now let's not sugarcoat anything. Barry George is a serial sex offender. He's a rapist. And serial sex offenders progress to murder. From John Duffy to Robert Napper, they all started as sex offenders. Now, serial sex offenders do not stop. I guess progress is the wrong word. Escalate. Serial sex offenders escalate to murder. For all you people, oh, poor old Barry George, the police just set him up. He has mental health issues. He has learning disabilities. Would you be happy to leave a female loved one of yours in a room with Barry George? Would you be happy to see Barry George walk behind a female loved one of yours in the street at night? You wouldn't. So let's cut the pity party out. Now, in 1993, I believe it was, Rachel Nickel was murdered on Wimbledon Common. Barry George was questioned by police about this murder. So why was Barry George questioned about the Wimbledon Common murder? Easy. Criminal psychologists understand that serial sex offenders escalate to murder. Okay, so this is Michael Howlett. Joined the Special Hospital Service Authorities in London as secretary to the board, working alongside chief executives in the management of 3 special hospitals for the mentally disordered offenders, Ashworth, Broadmoor and Rampton. In 1993, with Jane Zito, he set up the Zito Trust, a high-profiling campaigning organisation focused on the reform of the community care mental health services. He was the director for 15 years and was instrumental in campaigning for significant reform to mental health policies which were implemented by various governments, culminating in the Mental Health Act 2009. Okay, here's what he had to say about Barry George in 2001. Examination after arrest showed killer had 6 personality disorders. Jill Dando's killer, Barry George, suffered a variety of psychological disorders throughout much of his adult life. Doctors who examined him after the arrest diagnosed him with 6 personality disorders. Experts believed he should have received treatment from an earlier age, but it is understood he was only referred once for psychiatric treatment. Michael Howlett, director of Zito Trust for Mental Health Reform, said, Barry George is not someone who should have been out in the community. As an adult, he had a criminal record involving numerous offences of aggression and violence towards women, accumulating in the brutal murder of Jill Dando. This may have never happened had Barry George received proper services, he added. The various disorders that George has included psychopathic personality characteristics, where people appear charming but are callous and self-serving, narcissistic personality disorder, categorized by a sense of self-importance.
And no sense, I didn't even know she lived in the area or who she was.
So in the 2015 interview, Barry George claims he didn't even know she lived in the area or who she was. So to me, that's a hard sell to believe that Barry George didn't know who Jill Dando was. He believes that. Why would he feel the need to lie about something like that 16 years after the murder? Of course he knew who Jill Dando was. Everyone did. She was all over the television. I was in my early teens and I knew who Jill Dando was. How could he not know who Jill Dando was? And he also says he didn't even know she lived in the area. This article is from the Evening Standard, dated the 10th of June 2008. The man accused of killing TV personality Jill Dando lay flowers near the spot she was shot, a court heard today. Barry George told staff at a local help centre that he went to Miss Dando's house the day after she was killed on her doorstep, jurors were told. The defendant said he did not keep his appointment of the previous day because he had been laying flowers at Jill Dando's house on behalf of the church. Lies on top of lies on top of lies to cover lies. In 2015 he claimed he had never heard of Jill Dando at the time. But in 1999, days after the murder of Jill Dando, he told Hafad he missed his appointment because he was leaving flowers outside her house. These two things can't work at the same time. So you might look at this and say, oh, it's the mental health. No, Barry George has Asperger's syndrome. People with Asperger's syndrome are more likely to be brutally honest than they are to tell lies. If you didn't know who Jill Dando was at the time, why did you leave flowers outside her house the day after she was murdered? So this particular lie is a big lie. I'm going to break it down in another video because this had to do with his alibi. So if you're looking at this and you're thinking, oh, this doesn't mean anything, it does, because it shows that Barry George is quick-witted enough to tell lies on the fly to manage perception. The problem that psychopaths and impulsive liars have is it's easy to tell a lie, to cover a lie, but you've got to have a really good memory, because eventually you're gonna get caught out. And when people tell the truth, the story stays consistent and there's not blatant contradictions in the story. So everyone remembers this picture of Barry George in his house holding what appears to be a replica or a blank firing gun. But did you know that Barry George denies that that's him in this picture? Why? We can all see it's Barry George, but he denies it's him in the picture. When Barry George was released from prison, he was interviewed and asked about a picture, and he says, "As for the picture," George said, "that's not me, but I can't comment on it too much because there is ongoing legal issues." The legal issues he's referring to is, this picture was never proven to be Barry George in court. So when he was released from prison, they tried to sue the newspapers that printed this picture, claiming it was Barry George. Absolutely despicable. I'm going to get into more details on that in my next video, but before I go, I'm going to leave you with Jill Dando's brother. Let's hear what he's got to say about the case.
It was just a misguided individual who was in that street on the day with a firearm, who knew where Jill lived, and who just struck lucky for whatever reason.